Hey, my name's Matt TK Miller. Welcome back to part 2, where we finish and find out completely who the average bow hunter is. Last time we looked at things like most popular bow brand, most popular Broadhead brand, how many people have had mechanicals, expandables, fail on them, and lots more. Today we're looking at ethics, harvest quantities, and a little look in social media. If you missed the first video, I'm not going to redo it again. There's a lot of good pre-text in there. Go back and watch it. It talks about the history of the survey, some of the results, how they're made and stuff like that. Survey is still open, so go and fill it out if you haven't done, especially if you're like, but my brand's not up top. Make it happen, vote for it. I am going to go back over the results again in a couple of months time, so keep filling the form out. Please share it around. We're just about at 1,200 responses now, which is good. So we've got another nearly 100 actually since last week's video. So again, all the raw data is available for anybody to use. All the important links down the bottom, including my scratch sheet. Once you've filled out the survey, you can see the results for yourself and browse through it at your own leisure. Ladies and gentlemen, and that carrot, let's get ready to crunch numbers. First up,
over what distance do you think it's irresponsible for an archer to take a shot at a live animal?
Now this one is a bit of a bone of contention for me. It really depends where in the world you're located, which country, which state, which species you're after. Here in Sweden, where bow hunting is illegal, they preach 25 meters is the maximum that you should shoot an animal at. I always say, well, how do you think the rest of the world get on? Like there are many states where you couldn't get into 25 meters of an animal. What about ibex hunting, sheep hunting? I could go on, right? I think we can all agree it depends on your bow setup, arrow setup, and your own confidence. I personally think anything over 40 meters is too far, which is 44 yards. Let's see what you guys think.
So according to the majority of you, over 50 yards is too far and irresponsible, with 21.4% of you agreeing with this. Coming in second is 40 yards with 19.3%. Third was 60 yards with 18.4%. Fourth is 45 yards with 7.3%, and last is 70 yards with 7.1%.
So there we have it, and I honestly think that is the best gauge in the world to set what is a ethical limit for shooting animals with a bow, because you guys and girls are the ones out there doing it, and so this is a great snapshot to take and what people should be using as an ethical standard. Obviously the closer is always the better, no one's debating that, but like you can't set 25 meters as a standard for every country. It doesn't work. Sorry, I don't mean to teach you how to suck eggs. Ethics are just really important. I think you know what I mean.
Next up, the fun section. Where would you shoot these animals?
This stunner of a buck standing right here, slightly quartering away. I'm gonna send it down D all day, baby, all day.
So 61.3% of you guys would drop the hammer on him at spot D. 15.9% of you would be laying the smack down at point B. 10.1% of you would not take the shot. 7.1% of you would shoot at another spot, and 2.6% of you would be smoking him in C.
Really? The only thing that surprises me about that is 10% of you wouldn't take that shot. Quartering away shot is great. It gets all the squishy bits. Next up, Sir Barry Broadside. I'm going to be sending it through D.
So 50.3% of you would be sending it through F. 18.6% of you would be slipping it into E, 12.4% would be slocking it through C, 9.7% of you would be with me, sinking it deep into the D, and 5% would be going for B.
Nothing really to say about this one, but I think A and B are a little bit iffy, but you do you. So back to Quentin quartering away. I'm going to be sending it at D. It's going to be getting the D through the vital V on the other side.
And 47.9% of you are going to send it through C. 22.3% of people are aiming for D. 20.5% of people are aiming for A. 5% for B, and 3.1% of you are shooting another spot.
So C for the win, but in my opinion, I think it's a little far forward. Again, I haven't bow hunted very long, only two years, but I always got taught that you aim for the exit, right? So I don't know, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So Mr. Freddy Fronton,
62.1% of you would not shoot this angle, 12.4% of you would plug it in C, 10.4% of you would give it some extra ventilation at A, 8.1% of you would be sticking it in D, and 4.4% of you would be hitting B.
This is a tough shot, and I'm honestly not sure that I would take this shot. I mean, again, it's just important to know your limits, you know, what your arrow weight is, what you've got on the front end, and also how close you are, right? Now we get to pigs.
So 44% of you would not shoot at this angle, 36.1% of you would be shooting at C, 9.8% would be trying to get some bacon by shooting A, 3.7% would be hitting D, and 3.2% of you would be trying for B.
Here we have Quinn, the quartering 2 piggy, and I would be hitting that G spot. I honestly didn't pick these spots with these letters on purpose.
So 30.5% of you would not take this shot, 22.9% of you would be giving it the full send at F, 14.3% of you would be going for G, 12.1% of you for D, 6% of you would be aiming for A.
I don't have much to say about this one, and again, comes down to knowing your limits, your gear, and you know what range we're at.
Do you have an issue with people shooting deer in velvet?
This one came up because I've talked to some Europeans that have a problem with it. Now, I don't have a problem with it. Some racks look amazing in velvet, right? So let's see what you guys think.
So a massive 82.5% of you have no issues with it, 9.4% are not bothered either way, 4.3% say it depends on the deer, and 2.3% of people do have an issue with it.
Next up.
Do you understand the heavy arrow movement?
So this one, I'm predicting that most people are not on board with it. It gets a lot of hard time in social media for different reasons, and I honestly think that some of the wrong messaging is starting to get out about it. Like it's kind of growing into a weird thing now. Nobody is saying that you need a 600 to 700 grain arrow for shooting whitetail. Not even the Ranch Fairy.
Now I'm telling you, I still want you over 16% forward to center. I still want your total arrow mass, point, shaft, all that, over 550, over 550, over 550, but it has to fly. But
I'm not going to preach anything here. Let's see what you guys think.
59.1% of you do understand it and it makes sense to you. 17.5% of you do not understand it, but you'd like to learn more. 12.6% understand it, but do not agree with it. 6.7% do not understand it. And 4.1% chose not to answer.
Pretty cool, to be honest, and like I was saying before, it's often a scary topic for a lot of people because it often challenges how somebody has been hunting for the last 10 years or something like that, right? So nobody likes to have that put on them. It's also can be a little bit scary in terms of how do I do this with my arrows, right? Tuning, I don't know anything about tuning. And so it can be a little bit scary. It's actually not, just takes a little bit of time, and maybe you're into that stuff, maybe you're not. I honestly think the original good intentions and messaging that came out with this stuff from the Ranch Fairies got very much lost by a whole bunch of people that are measuring their roosters. Trying to have the heaviest arrow out there. I mean, it originally comes from the 12 arrow penetration factors, right? It's not really the heavy arrow movement, it's just what it's been nicknamed. And mass is actually number 6 on that list. Let that one sink in. If you want to know anything more about it, there's a link in the description below.
Right, do you have a problem with people shooting bedded animals?
Me, I don't really have an issue with this, but I'll talk about that later because we'll cover it with the feeders as well.
So, 71.8% of you do not have an issue with it, 17.8% of you are not bothered by it either way, 8.9% of you have an issue with it, and 1.5% did not want to answer. Next up, do you have an issue with people shooting deer over a feeder?
Again, the feeders, I don't have any issues with this. We'll get to it in a second.
62.9% of you do not have an issue with it, 19.2% are not bothered either way, 16.1% of you do have an issue with it, 1.7% rather not answer.
So there we go, it's pretty widely accepted, but now let's have a look and see if you're speciesists, would that be the word for it?
Do you have an issue with people shooting pigs over a feeder?
Now, My prediction for this is that people are going to care less about people shooting pigs over feeders.
So 84.8% of you have no issue with it at all, which is a 20% change. 11% of you are not bothered either way. 3.6% of you do have an issue, and 0.7% of you chose not to answer.
So yeah, we don't care about pigs as much as deer. Holla holla, get that hog.
Sorry, this one is a little bit of a read, bear with me. We have a responsibility to make the best shot we can. With this in mind, a feeder can provide a more controlled situation to make a cleaner shot. A bedded animal is not moving and often presents a good shot at its vitals, making it a safer shot to take, as long as the vitals are not blocked. With this in mind, if you had an issue with one or both of the two above questions, has your opinion changed at all?
This is the question I was referring to earlier, and this is kind of why I don't have an issue with people shooting over feeders or bedded animals, okay? As long, obviously it's hunting, right? Things can change, but they both offer a more controlled environment. Obviously a bedded animal is a little bit more tricky, right? The vitals can't be blocked at all. The orientation, if you want to call it, the placement of the organs can change a little bit too. So it requires a little bit of extra knowledge, but the main point about it and the feeder is that usually it creates a better shot opportunity. So let's see what people think who originally had an issue with either shooting bedded animals or animals over feeders after being pitched that.
49.4% of you say yes, that makes sense and I agree. 32% say I see the logic, but I still do not agree. Then 18.6% still think it's unethical.
So if we add the two parts up where people don't really agree, just over 50% of people still don't like it.
Do you have an issue with high fenced hunting areas?
I personally don't have a problem with this as long as the area is not tiny, but I have to say I have done it myself and it's definitely not as rewarding feeling as taking an animal in the wild. So will I do it? Yes. Do I prefer to? No. And my prediction for this is that people will have an issue with it.
So 31.9% of you have an issue with it, but if others want to do it, that's on them. 30.2% are not bothered either way. 16.8% do not have an issue. 10.5% of people think it's okay for some species or in some situations. 9% of people have an issue and they think it's wrong.
Well, it's a pretty even split, and I think the best thing about this is that people are tolerant of other people's hunting methods, even if it's not theirs. Now, this is what makes me really happy. We collectively, as a hunting community, can give the animal rights activists the massive big middle finger with this one. Check it out.
What is your primary drive for hunting? 53% of you awesome people are doing it for meat.
Which is awesome because the main focus of the anti-hunters and the media is that we're just bone-hungry trophy hunters, right?
24.8% of you love doing it so you can spend quality time with friends, family, or loved ones. 7.2% of you are in it for the bone. 5.6% of you wrote that you felt all the options were equally as important to you. 1.4% do it primarily for population control.
So yeah, I personally don't have a problem with trophy hunting, but these stats are great for us as a bow hunting community.
How many animals have you taken with a bow?
For me, I'm up to 24 animals, I think it is now. I actually need to go and start writing them down before I completely forgot. Let's have a look at yours.
So 8.3% of you have actually not taken an animal yet with a bow. 6.8% of you have taken 1, 6.4% have taken 20, 6.2% have taken 2, and 5.8% have taken 15. How many animals have you hit with a bow and lost?
Let's just get this one out of the way, huh?
31% of you have not lost a single animal. 22.5% of you have lost 1, 16.4% have lost 2, 9.9% of you have lost 3, and 5% have lost 4.
So to be honest, not as bad as I thought. Good work, team.
Do you personally know someone that has lost one?
Yes, yes I do.
And 82.8% of you do, 16.2% of you do not, and 1% would rather not say.
So now we get into the last part, which is social media, and it's not going to take long.
So, do you follow any hunting shows or helpful hunting channels on social media? 86.3% of you do, 13.4% of you do not, and 0.3% would rather not say. Have you used social media to help solve an issue you have had with your archery?
This one's awesome. I mean, who needs a library or an encyclopedia anymore, right?
So 62.4% of you have, 26.8% of you have not, 10.6% of you just take it to the archery shop. Overall, do you think social media is good for hunting? 56.7% of you think it's good, 32.1% have no opinion on it, 8.5% think it's bad, and 2.7% of you would rather not say.
So there we have it. That's the end of the survey. Let's have a recap and see exactly who the average bow hunter is. They are aged 31 to 35 years old, a male that lives in Pennsylvania, has hunted 3 to 4 years, and likes to head over to Ohio to shoot those big bucks. Shoots a Matthews compound bow with a 70-pound draw and a drop-away arrow rest. Uses a wrist or finger release to shoot his 401 to 450 grain arrow that probably has a rage on the front of it. He lines those deer up through a 4 to 5 pin sight from a tree stand at a whitetail deer. He has shot expandables, has never had one fail, but will be using a fixed blade this year. While sitting on the toilet, he often dreams about going to another country to bow hunt. Practices 1 to 3 times a week out of season. Would smoke this deer right here, Barry right here, and Quentin here. However, would not shoot it Freddy front on. Is not keen to take this shot on this pig. Actually, any pig in this survey. Does not care about shooting deer in velvet or if they're bedded. He understands the heavy arrow movement and it makes sense to him. Does not care if people shoot pigs or deer over feeders. Has an issue with high fence hunting. However, doesn't mind if other people want to do it. Hunts primarily for meat. Has actually not shot anything, but on the same foot hasn't lost any. However, his neighbor Barry has lost one. Is hooked on social media, uses it for help, and thinks it's good for hunting. Thanks for watching. You guys are awesome. Remember, I'm Matt Miller. The survey is still open. If you haven't filled it out, go and do that now. It really helps spread it around. Come and join us in Discord. Subscribe to the channel. Have a bloody good season. Thank you very much.